There she was, the woman who once promised our neighborhood forever harmony. Now on her knees at my doorstep, begging for my vote to save her precious presidency. 6 months ago, Linda Hargrove looked me right in the eyes during the annual HOA meeting and said she needed a restructuring break to find the true spirit of Oakwood Grove. Now she's found her way back to my front porch with that same fake smile cracking at the edges. You don't get to find me in a poverty and then decide when I'm fixed enough to help you. The shock on her Botox face when those words left my mouth, priceless. Her eyes widened like a deer caught in the headlights of the very rules she weaponized against everyone else. She thought I'd be waiting with open arms and a checkbook. She thought I'd be grateful for the chance to kiss her ring again. She thought wrong. What she didn't realize was that while she was out finding herself through selective enforcement and backroom deals, I was finding my worth. And it was worth way more than the property values she kept screaming about. What happened next left her absolutely speechless. Voice softens just a touch for the camera. If you've ever had your peaceful suburban life shattered by someone who swore to protect it, you're not alone. Subscribe and smash that notification bell to join me on this journey of HOA betrayal, patient revenge, and what happens when you finally choose yourself over their tyranny. 3 years ago, I moved into Oakwood Grove thinking I'd found paradise. I was 28, fresh off a promotion at the marketing firm, ready to plant roots in a place with actual community spirit. Linda was 50-something, the HOA president with a perfect highlighted bob and a clipboard that never left her side. She greeted me on moving day with a welcome basket and a speech about protecting our forever home together. Her voice dripped honey. We're all family here, Sophia. Just follow the guidelines and we'll all thrive. Our first year felt magical. She organized block parties where neighbors actually talked instead of glaring over fences. I brought my homemade guacamole. She praised it loud enough for everyone to hear. I suggested a community garden on the empty lot at the end of Maple Lane. She nodded like it was the best idea since sliced bread. For the children and the property values, she'd say, and the whole cul-de-sac would clap. My friend from work started calling me the HOA Golden Girl. Game nights in backyards, Sunday potlucks, even a group chat called Oakwood Family, where Linda posted daily inspirational reminders about keeping lawns at exactly 2.5 inches. I introduced her to my parents when they visited. She hugged them like long-lost relatives. Her husband, Dave, became the guy who borrowed my hedge trimmer and always returned it with a wink. We built this beautiful circle together until the circle started tightening around my neck. By year 2, we had a rhythm. I'd wake up early for my run and see Linda already out with her measuring tape, waving like we were besties. I'd come home to HOA emails praising my model compliance. We talked about the future of the neighborhood, bigger holiday displays, maybe even solar panels if the board approved. She'd joke about how we'd all grow old on these porches, still laughing about the time the Smiths tried to paint their mailbox blue. I'd imagine peaceful years ahead. No more city noise, just the gentle hum of suburban perfection. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment things changed. It was subtle at first. Linda started replying to my friendly texts with one-word answers. The distant look in her eyes when I mentioned expanding the garden. The way she'd drive past my house slower than usual, phone glued to her ear. She's just stressed about the new roofing ordinance, I told myself. I gave her space. I tried harder. I volunteered for the welcome committee, baked extra cookies for meetings, asked fewer questions, anything to bring back the Linda who used to call me our shining star. Then came that Thursday night. I'd baked her favorite lemon bars for the monthly board meeting. She sat at the head of the folding table, barely touching her dessert, rehearsing some speech in her head. Sophia, she began, voice syrupy sweet, I need to talk to you about something. My stomach dropped. Those words never precede anything good. I feel like the old guidelines are stifling the true spirit of Oakwood Grove. I need a break from the lenient era, a restructuring pause to figure out who we really are as a community. She assured me it wasn't a breakup with the neighborhood, just a temporary tightening of rules for clarity. She'd been feeling stuck, restless, unfulfilled by weak enforcement. Words that cut through me like her ridiculous 2.5-inch lawn tape. How long? I managed to ask. A few weeks, maybe a month, she said, patting my hand like I was a child. I nodded through the confusion, wanting to be the understanding resident, the supportive neighbor. I even helped her draft the new enforcement email that very night. That's the kind of person I was, putting everyone else's power trip before my own peace. After the meeting, my best friend Taylor from 2 streets came over with wine. Girls who want restructuring breaks usually want something else, Sophia, she said gently. They just don't have the courage to admit they're about to screw everyone over. I defended her. Linda's different. She's just going through a phase. She'll ease up. I believe that with my whole heart. I had no idea what restructuring would actually mean. The first week of her break was excruciating. I'd check the HOA app every 5 minutes, hoping for a softer tone. The emails came, breadcrumbs. Thinking of our shared values. Hope your lawn is thriving. Nothing substantial. Nothing that indicated when the old Linda would return. I tried to keep busy. I threw myself into work, stayed late at the office, took on extra projects, anything to ignore the yellow violation notices already appearing on my door for excessive flower height. 2 weeks in, I was grabbing coffee with Taylor when I saw Linda through the window of the upscale country club across the street. She wasn't alone. A woman with long blonde hair, new board member Vanessa, sat across from her, laughing, her hand casually touching Linda's on the table. My coffee cup froze midway to my mouth. Taylor saw too and grabbed my arm, but I was already crossing the street. The look on Linda's face, surprise, then guilt, then that practiced president smile. Sophia. Hey, this is Vanessa. She's just helping me through the restructuring. Vanessa smiled tightly, removing her hand. I nodded, throat too tight to speak, and walked away. Later she texted, "It wasn't what it looked like. I'm still figuring out the new guidelines." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But then came the HOA app stories. Linda at private luncheons with select homeowners, Linda at board retreats with her inner circle, Linda posting photos of her own backyard, taller grass, unapproved fountain, while my petunias got a $250 fine. Each post was another crack in my trust. You need to document everything, Taylor insisted over wine. She's clearly moved on to her favorites. But I couldn't. Not yet. I was still clinging to the version of Linda who had promised we were family. 3 weeks turned into a month. Her emails became less frequent. When I called the board line, it went to voicemail. I started keeping my own records, not just for therapy, but for the pattern I was seeing. Always being the compliant one. Always putting the HOA first. I joined a self-defense class at the community center, unleashing frustration on punching bags instead of replying to her passive-aggressive notes. I reconnected with neighbors I'd neglected during the Golden Girl phase. I planted a tiny, defiant vegetable patch in the back, hidden, of course. Slowly, I started finding pieces of myself that had gone dormant under her rules. I laughed more. I made decisions without wondering what Linda would post about it. I started to imagine a future that didn't necessarily include her clipboard. Then came the moment that changed everything. 6 weeks into her restructuring, our mutual neighbor Mike showed up at my door looking uncomfortable. "I think you need to see something," he said, reluctantly pulling out his phone. I don't want to be the messenger, but if it were me, I'd want to know. The photos loaded, and suddenly every crack in my trust shattered completely. There was Linda with her arm around Vanessa at a rooftop bar. Another showed her kissing a contractor at a site inspection. 3 different special friends in 2 weeks, all while my mailbox color was deemed non-compliant beige. My hand shook as I scrolled. Each image burned into my memory. "I'm sorry, Sophia," Mike said quietly. "There's more." That night, I called Linda. Not emailed, called. This deserved her voice. She answered on the 4th ring. Music and laughter in the background. "Sophia, can I call you back? I'm kind of in the middle of, I saw the photos, Linda." Silence. Then the background noise faded as she stepped outside. Look, I can explain. We're on a restructuring break, right? Isn't that what it means? Time apart to explore new approaches. Explore other people's rules while finding me for breathing. My voice trembled with rage I didn't know I possessed. It's not like that, she started, but I cut her off. Who was she? The blonde at the club? She sighed. Vanessa from the new finance committee. And the contractor? Just business. Each name was another knife. Did you waive their violation notices the way you hammered mine? Her silence was my answer. How could you? I whispered. We were supposed to be family. We're on a break, she repeated, voice rising defensively. I needed to see what else was out there for the community. I told you I needed space. Space to think, not space to screw half the board and ignore your own 2.5-inch rule. Then came the confession that broke me. It didn't mean anything. It was just networking. I hung up and collapsed on my kitchen floor, sobbing until my throat was raw. Taylor came over immediately, holding me while I fell apart. There's something else, she said hesitantly when my crying subsided. Linda told Dave she'd been planning this restructuring for months. She felt trapped by the old board and wanted freedom before locking in her legacy. The calculated nature of it made everything worse. This wasn't a sudden crisis. This was premeditated power grab. The next day, I went to her house to return some community files she'd lent me. Her husband, uncomfortable but sympathetic, let something slip. I told Linda she should have been honest with everyone from the start instead of downloading those private contractor apps behind the board's back. Apps from January, when we were still family, still planning the holiday light contest together. The final blow came from Taylor, who'd heard from her boyfriend that Linda had been telling the inner circle to break was just to sow some wild oats before settling into permanent control, with me as her reliable backup resident who would always comply. I wasn't her shining star. I was her safety net, the compliant girl who would always be waiting. Except I wouldn't be. Not anymore. The days after discovering Linda's betrayal blurred together. I called in sick to work for a week, barely eating, barely sleeping. When I did sleep, I'd wake up forgetting for a blissful moment, then remember the yellow notices taped to my door like scarlet letters. The grief came in waves. Sometimes I'd be watering my hidden tomatoes and suddenly find myself on the ground sobbing. Other times rage would surge so intensely I'd scream into pillows until my voice gave out. This is normal, my therapist assured me. You're grieving not just the neighborhood you thought you had, but the future you planned under her rules. I deleted every group photo of Linda from my phone. Though I saved screenshots to a hidden folder, I told myself I'd never open. I boxed up her welcome baskets and had Taylor drop them at her porch at midnight. I blocked her personal number, the HOA app notifications, her email. A complete digital amputation. It feels like she died, I told Taylor one night, except worse because she chose this. My house felt haunted by memories of her smiling face at every barbecue. I rearranged the furniture, painted the trim a shade she'd once called tacky, bought new planters that definitely violated the approved earth tones only rule. I erased her physically while trying to exorcise her emotionally. Neighbors took sides after the first wave of her new finds hit everyone else too. Some mutual friends stopped waving when I walked by, choosing her clipboard over their own wallets. Others showed up with casseroles and whispered solidarity. We're with you, Sophia. Just don't say it too loud. 6 weeks after her restructuring began, my phone lit up with an unknown number at 2 a.m. Sophia. Her voice slurred through the speaker, probably from one of those networking nights. I miss the way things were. No one gets the community like you do. I hung up and blocked the number, but my hand shook for an hour after. By month 2, I was functioning again. I'd lost 10 pounds from stress, then gained it back with stress eating. I cut my hair into a sharp bob. Linda would have hated, another act of rebellion. I started wearing bright colors and styles that definitely didn't match the subtle palette guideline. I became someone new because the old me had trusted the wrong president. I went on a coffee date with a guy from work, then another with someone Taylor introduced. Nothing serious, just reminders that I could still laugh without checking if Linda was watching. Linda watched it all from afar. Neighbors told me she asked about me at every meeting. Is she still upset? Did she mention the garden? 3 months after her break began, I arrived home from work to find her sitting on my steps. She looked different, thinner, her usual power suit wrinkled, confidence dimmed. A bouquet of my favorite flowers clutched in her hands like a peace offering. "Sophia," she said, standing as I approached. "Please, just give me 5 minutes." I should have walked past her, should have gone inside and locked the door. But some small, stupid part of me, the part that still woke up checking the HOA app, wanted to hear what she had to say. 5 minutes, I agreed, unlocking my door. That's all you get. I had no idea those 5 minutes would change everything. Linda sat on my couch, the same couch where she once praised my compliance, looking both familiar and foreign. The flowers rested on the coffee table between us, already wilting slightly at the edges, much like her rehearsed smile. "I made a terrible mistake," she began, eyes brimming with tears that seemed almost too perfect. "These past months, without your support, have been hell. No one understands the board like you do, Sophia. No one cares for the community the way you did." She went on about her restructuring journey, how it had led her back to me, how she'd realized I was what the neighborhood needed all along. Her words were beautiful, carefully crafted, hitting all the right emotional notes. "I know I hurt you," she continued, reaching for my hand, which I reluctantly allowed. "But I'm a different president now. I've grown. I've changed. I want to build the legacy we always talked about, the one with you by my side." Something in her voice sounded hollow, rehearsed. But there was also desperation there, an urgency I couldn't quite place. "What happened with the board recall petition?" I asked quietly. Her expression flickered, surprise briefly crossing her features. "How did you—" "Just answer the question, Linda." She sighed, shoulders slumping. "I was advised to step back temporarily. Budget issues. In my own house. Well, the new inspector is being difficult." As she spoke, I felt a strange calmness wash over me. 3 months ago this moment, Linda returning, begging for my support, would have been everything I wanted. I might have fallen back into compliance, grateful for her return. But now something fell off. "Sophia, none of that matters. What matters is us starting fresh." I've learned my lesson. I stood up and walked to my desk, retrieving a manila envelope. "You know what's interesting, Linda? 2 weeks after Mike showed me those photos, I hired someone, a private investigator." The color drained from her face. "See, I needed closure, my therapist called it." I opened the envelope. Imagine my surprise when he showed me these photos spilled onto the coffee table. Linda at Vanessa's door with flowers identical to mine. Linda having dinner with the contractor, her hand on his thigh. Linda withdrawing large sums from ATMs outside casinos while the HOA treasury showed mysterious shortfalls. "You're not just trying to get my vote, are you? You've been feeding the same lines to at least 3 board members this week alone." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. A fish suddenly out of water. "And these?" I pointed to the casino photos. The investigator did some digging. "You owe quite a bit of money to some very impatient people, don't you, Linda? Embezzlement has a way of catching up." "I can explain," she started, but the mask slipped just for a moment and I saw it. The calculation behind the tears, the true desperation driving her return. "How dare you come back here?" I said, my voice unervingly calm, even to my own ears. "How dare you sit on my couch with those rehearsed tears and practice lines about community spirit while your own backyard violates every single rule you find me for?" Linda's expression shifted from shock to defensive anger. "You had me investigated? That's insane, Sophia. This is exactly why we needed restructuring. You're so difficult." There it was. The gaslighting I'd expected. Right on cue. Difficult. I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Wanting basic fairness from the woman who ran this neighborhood for 3 years is difficult? No, Linda, what's insane is thinking you could use me as your backup compliant resident. Your safety net when the recall vote is breathing down your neck. She stood up, switching tactics, her voice softening. "Sophia, you're twisting everything. I made mistakes, yes, but I came back for the neighborhood. For you. You came back because you're broke, your board is turning on you, and the bank is calling about those casino withdrawals. You came back because Vanessa saw through your lies, the contractor got tired of your games, and Dave wants his quiet life back. That's not true. I care about this community. I always have. I took a deep breath. You know what the strangest part of all this is? 3 months ago, I would have believed you. I would have voted for you in a heartbeat because I thought I needed your approval to belong here. I walked to my phone on the counter and pressed a button. Sophia, what are you doing? Her voice edged with panic. I'm not the same resident you left, Linda. That woman doesn't exist anymore. Hey, Sophia, we're all here. Taylor's voice suddenly came through the speaker. We can hear everything. Linda froze, eyes widening in horror. Who's we? Just our entire neighborhood group chat. Mike, Ryan, Taylor, Jen, Chris, even your husband Dave. They've been listening to every word. Plus the recorded board meetings where you called me the problem child while waiving your own violations. You set me up, she whispered. No, Linda. You set yourself up. I just made sure everyone could finally see the real you. I walked to my closet and returned with a box. Here are the last of your community files. I've also included printouts of all your private texts to contractors, the financial statements showing missing funds, and the public records proving your house has been non-compliant since January, when we were still family. Her face contorted with rage and humiliation. You had no right. I had every right to protect myself from someone who saw me as nothing but a convenient yes woman. Someone who thought my compliance was guaranteed. Someone who believed my quiet nature made me weak. The fury in her eyes slowly gave way to realization. She had truly lost control forever. I spent 3 years trusting you, Linda. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my life trusting myself more than anyone who can't see my worth without a clipboard. I opened my front door. Goodbye, Linda. She stared at me, speechless, mouth opening and closing without sound. The door closed between us with a soft final click that echoed like the sweetest victory bell in the suburbs. 6 months after I closed that door, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. My promotion at work came through last month, the one I almost didn't apply for because Linda once said I wasn't ready for that kind of visibility. My new garden is thriving in the front yard now. Tomatoes, peppers, even a little flag that stays up year-round, because rules are for people who actually follow them. The neighborhood looks different too. After the group chat exploded with the evidence, a recall vote passed in record time. Linda stepped down the next week, muttering about ungrateful residents as she packed her clipboard for the last time. Healing wasn't linear. Some days I'd wake up angry, replaying all the signs I'd missed. The way she'd check my location via the HOA security cameras under the guise of making sure you're safe. The way she'd subtly criticize my ideas until I doubted them. The grand promises after every fine. Classic power bombing followed by neglect. It wasn't your fault, my therapist reminded me. But recognizing these patterns is your power now. The unexpected silver lining of HOA betrayal is clarity. My boundaries are titanium now, not just with neighbors, but at work, in friendships, everywhere. I know my worth isn't determined by someone else's approval or a 2.5-inch lawn. I've started hosting my own block parties, real ones, with no clipboard required. Taylor jokes that I now have a Karen detector that can spot fake community spirit from a mile away. Last week I found an old welcome basket Linda gave me tucked in the garage. For the first time I could look at it without my blood pressure spiking. I didn't see the perfect neighborhood I once idealized. I saw a younger version of myself standing next to someone who couldn't recognize her value unless she stayed small. I tossed it in the trash without hesitation. Sometimes the universe takes away what we think we want to make room for what we actually need. Linda's betrayal didn't break me. It broke me open. It forced me to become the person I was always meant to be, complete on my own terms, garden and all. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is leave. I told Taylor recently. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is not let them come back. That's the gift I gave myself, the courage to choose self-respect over false promises, the wisdom to recognize that forgiveness doesn't require compliance, the strength to stand tall rather than kneel for approval. So I ask you, have you ever had to choose between silence and self-respect when an HOA Karen came knocking? What did you choose? And more importantly, what did that choice teach you about your own worth? The neighborhood changed almost overnight once the truth spread. The group chat that once buzzed with Linda's daily rule reminders turned into a flood of Me Too stories. Mike admitted she'd waived his fence violation because his wife played tennis with Vanessa. Ryan confessed the contractor was her cousin. Even Dave quietly moved his things to a storage unit, tired of living under the same roof as her crumbling empire. Property values? They actually went up once people stopped living in fear of yellow notices taped like wanted posters. I started getting invites again, real ones. Sophia, come to our barbecue. No clipboard required. The new interim board asked me to consult on rewriting the guidelines. I said yes, but only if they included a clause about presidents actually following their own rules. They laughed. I didn't. I'd learned the hard way that laughter without teeth is just another way to stay compliant. One evening, about 4 months after the confrontation, I was out front watering my now legal tomatoes when a familiar BMW pulled up. Not Linda, her husband Dave. He looked exhausted but relieved. She's gone to stay with her sister in Florida, he said, leaning against the car. Told everyone it was for health reasons, but we both know the truth. Thank you, Sophia. You did what the rest of us were too scared to do. I just nodded. No gloating. The satisfaction wasn't in his thanks. It was in the quiet that finally settled over Oakwood Grove. The dark humor of it all still hits me sometimes. I catch myself chuckling at the absurdity. A woman who spent years measuring my grass to the millimeter, now hiding in Florida because her own backyard looked like a jungle. The same president who preached family values, exposed for treating the neighborhood like her personal casino. Neighbors still whisper about the casino photos that somehow got printed and left on every driveway the morning after the group call. I swear I had nothing to do with that part. Mike took creative liberties. But I didn't stop him. Sometimes karma needs a little help with the postage. Taylor and I still laugh about the night Linda tried one last desperate text. Blocked, of course, claiming the investigator was biased and the photos doctored. The woman who once called my flower beds an eyesore suddenly believed in conspiracy theories. The irony was thicker than her foundation. I kept the manila envelope, though. Not as a trophy, just a reminder. Every time I feel tempted to shrink myself for someone else's approval, I pull it out and remember the look on her face when the speakerphone lit up with 20 neighbors listening. That moment when the queen realized the peasants had receipts. It still gives me chills in the best way. Work is better too. I'm leading projects now without second-guessing every decision. My boss even joked that my HOA experience made me fearless in meetings. If only she knew the real story. I redecorated my entire house. Bright colors, bold art, zero beige. The old me would have worried about resale value. The new me plants whatever I want and dares anyone to measure it. The best part? Kids in the neighborhood started calling me Tomato Lady instead of the quiet one who always followed rules. They sneak over for cherry tomatoes and ask me to teach them how to grow things Linda once banned. I tell them the secret: water, sunlight, and zero fear of clipboards. Their parents smile nervously but don't stop them. Progress. 5 months in, the new board held its first election. I didn't run yet, but I voted for the candidate who promised rules that actually make sense and apply to everyone. She won in a landslide. Linda's name wasn't even on the ballot. It had been quietly removed after the financial audit started. Turns out those casino withdrawals weren't the only creative accounting. The HOA treasury was short by almost $50,000. Funny how the woman obsessed with my 2.5-inch grass never noticed her own missing funds. I still get the occasional late-night text from unknown numbers, probably her friends trying to guilt-trip me. You ruined a good woman. I just smile and delete. Ruined? I liberated an entire neighborhood. There's a difference. My therapist asked me last week if I regretted any of it. I told her the only thing I regret is not hiring the investigator sooner. She laughed and said that was healthy. For the first time in years, I feel healthy, strong, clear, unafraid. The woman who once baked lemon bars to appease a tyrant now bakes them because she wants to and shares them with people who actually deserve them. Sometimes I drive past Linda's old house, now for sale with a big price-reduced sign. The grass is still too long. The irony writes itself. I don't slow down anymore. I just keep driving toward my own perfectly imperfect yard, windows down, music loud, no rules telling me otherwise. The last piece of the puzzle fell into place on a random Tuesday. I was checking mail when an official letter arrived from the county. Notice of a lien on Linda's property for unpaid HOA-related fines she'd conveniently ignored on her own home. The investigator had forwarded everything to the authorities weeks ago. Turns out embezzlement plus selective enforcement equals actual criminal charges. She wasn't just a Karen. She was a cautionary tale with a court date. I printed the article from the local paper. Former HOA president faces audit amid alleged misuse of funds, and pinned it to my fridge right next to the photo of my thriving garden. Every morning I see it and remember, silence is compliance, and compliance almost cost me everything. Neighbors still stop by to share their own stories. The Smiths across the street admitted they paid $3,000 in secret donations to keep their Christmas lights up year-round. The Johnsons confessed Linda threatened to fine their disabled daughter's ramp unless they voted her way. Each confession felt like another layer of the old regime peeling away. We're not just a neighborhood anymore. We're survivors swapping war stories and laughing about how close we came to letting one woman ruin paradise. I started a new group chat, call it Oakwood Free. No president, no clipboard, just people deciding together what makes sense. Our first vote, allowing vegetable gardens everywhere. The motion passed unanimously. I planted mine bigger the next weekend and posted a photo with the caption, "No fines attached." The likes poured in. Taylor threw me a freedom from fines party last month. We grilled, played music, and let kids run wild without measuring their footsteps. No one checked lawn height once. At one point, someone raised a glass to Sophia, the woman who measured up when it counted. I laughed until I cried. The old me would have blushed and downplayed it. The new me just said, damn right. Linda tried one final move from Florida. She sent a handwritten letter, via her lawyer, of course, claiming emotional distress and asking me to sign a statement saying the photos were misunderstood. I read it out loud to the new group chat. The replies were instant. Tell her to measure her own grass. I sent back a single photo of my tomatoes and blocked the lawyer too. Some doors stay closed for good reason. 6 months later, I barely recognize the street. Houses look lived in instead of inspected. Kids play outside without parents glancing nervously toward the old president's porch. Property values didn't tank. They rose because people actually enjoy living here. Turns out freedom is the best curb appeal. I've started dating again, cautiously. Not to fill a void, but because I finally have room for someone who respects boundaries without needing a rule book. My first date asked about the garden. I told him the whole story. He listened, laughed in all the right places, and said, "Remind me never to measure your tomatoes." I knew he was keeper material. Last night, I found the original welcome basket I'd saved in the garage. For the first time, I opened it without anger. Inside was a faded note from 3 years ago. "Welcome to forever, Sophia. We're family." I read it once, smiled at the lie, and tossed the whole thing in the recycling. Sometimes the universe takes away what we think we want to make room for what we actually need. Linda's betrayal didn't break me. It broke the illusion that anyone gets to control my peace with a clipboard and a smile. It forced me to become the person I was always meant to be, loud, free, and completely unafraid of yellow notices. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is overreach so badly you finally push back. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is push hard enough that they never come back. That's the gift I gave myself, the courage to choose self-respect over false community, the wisdom to recognize that forgiveness doesn't require compliance, the strength to stand tall rather than kneel for approval. So I ask you again, have you ever had to choose between silence and self-respect when an HOA Karen came knocking? What did you choose? Drop it in the comments. And more importantly, what did that choice teach you about your own worth? Because trust me, once you measure your own value, no one else gets to set the height.